The silent guardian falls. The triple moons of Etheria cast an ethereal light across the ancient amphitheater of the universal concordance, their combined illumination creating shifting patterns across the alabaster steps. The galactic summit, held once every millennium, had drawn representatives from all corners of known space. Species that had once waged devastating wars now gathered in this sacred neutral ground, bound by treaties older than some civilizations. Dar. Joanna Reeves shifted uncomfortably in her formal diplomatic attire, unaccustomed to the stiffness of the ceremonial garb. As Chief Medical Officer of the Human Alliance vessel Nomad, she was here merely as support staff, humans being relatively new additions to galactic politics. The Real dignitaries stood closer to the central dais, where the eternal flame of unity burned with unnatural steadiness. "Remember," whispered Admiral Takashi beside her, his weathered face tight with concern, "not a word during the ceremony of convergence. Human voices are still jarring to the elder species." Joanna nodded, though her attention had already drifted elsewhere. Through the crowd of varied beings, some humanoid, others defying classification, she caught sight of movement that commanded instant respect. The crowd parted as if pushed by an invisible tide. Nix Thaler, the last elder of the Void Weavers, had arrived. Standing nearly 12 feet tall, the creature moved with impossible grace despite its massive frame. Its body seemed formed of living shadow and cosmic light, with patterns resembling distant nebulae shifting across its obsidian skin. For upper limbs moved in perfect harmony while its lower body glided rather than stepped. The Void Weavers were among the first spacefaring races, architects of the original peace accords after the Extinction Wars, and Nix Thaler was the last of the original signatories still living. Joanna couldn't help but stare, not just with awe like the others, but with professional concern. After 15 years of treating xenobiological emergencies, she recognized distress patterns across species. And something about Nix Thaler's movement pattern wasn't right. "Admiral," she whispered, breaking protocol. "Something's wrong with the elder." Takashi shot her a warning glance. "Not our concern, Doctor. We're observers only." But Joanna's medical scanner, discreetly integrated into her ceremonial bracelet, confirmed her suspicions. The energy patterns emanating from Nix Thaler showed irregularities, the equivalent of arrhythmia in a human. Subtle to most observers, but catastrophic in potential. The elder continued its approach to the central platform, where it would perform the ancient rites that renewed the peace accords for another millennium. The assembled dignitaries, from the crystalline luminari to the hive-minded Zeth collective, observed in reverent silence. Joanna's fingers tightened around her emergency medical pack, which she'd insisted on bringing despite protocol officers' objections. The irregularity in Nix Thaler's movement grew more pronounced with each passing moment. "Don't," Admiral Takashi warned, noticing her tension. Interfering with the ceremony would undo decades of diplomatic progress. But as Nix Thaler reached the central platform and the eternal flame responded, flaring brightly in recognition of the elder's presence, disaster struck. A shudder passed through the massive being's form, disrupting the cosmic patterns across its skin. For a moment, Nix Thaler seemed to freeze in place, limbs extended in the ritual gesture of unity. Then, with devastating finality, the great elder collapsed. The impact sent tremors through the ancient stone floor. Gasps erupted from hundreds of species, followed immediately by silence as the implications registered. No elder had ever fallen during a unity ceremony, it was an omen of catastrophic proportions. The High Counselor of the Luminari, a being composed of crystalline light, moved forward, raising his arms. "The ceremony must continue. This is merely..." But Joanna was already moving. Years of emergency medicine had taught her that seconds mattered, regardless of species or protocol. She pushed past stunned diplomats, ignoring the shocked expressions and translated threats coming through her universal translator. Security drones, sleek metallic constructs programmed to maintain order, moved to intercept her. "Human representative, return to your designated area immediately," they intoned in mechanical unison. "He's dying," Joanna shouted, ducking under the drone's containment field. I'm a doctor. She reached Nixthaler's side and dropped to her knees, med scanner already humming. The readings confirmed her worst fears. The Elder's energy core was destabilizing, the equivalent of massive cardiac arrest. Around her, chaos erupted. The Zeth collective representatives swarmed in agitation, their unified mind struggling to process this unprecedented event. The Luminari High Counselor's light dimmed in distress. Ambassador Orlon of the Thessalian Empire stepped forward, his scaled face contorted in outrage. "Remove the human," he demanded. "This is sacrilege." Admiral Takashi rushed forward. "Dr. Reeves, stand down immediately." But Joanna ignored them all, focused entirely on her patient. Standard protocols wouldn't work on a Void Weaver, their biology defied conventional understanding. But in her 15 years of xenomedicine, she'd studied obscure texts about the Elders, preparing for a moment she never truly expected to face. She reached into her medical pack and withdrew a device of her own design, an energy modulator calibrated to Void Weaver physiological patterns, theoretical until this moment. "Clear the area," she commanded with the authority only emergency physicians possess. To her surprise, even the outraged dignitaries fell silent. Perhaps it was the tone of absolute certainty in her voice, or perhaps it was the realization that no one else present had any idea how to save the fallen Elder. Joanna placed the modulator against what approximated Nixthaler's chest cavity and activated it. The device hummed, light pulsing in counter-rhythm to the Elder's fading energy signature. "Come on," she whispered, adjusting settings with practiced precision. "Don't you dare die on my watch." For several excruciating moments, nothing happened. The assembled galactic leaders watched in silence as a human, a member of one of the youngest spacefaring races, attempted to save one of the most ancient and revered beings in the known universe. Then, just as hope began to fade, Nixthaler's body pulsed with renewed energy. The cosmic patterns across its skin brightened, flowing with more regularity. A sound like distant thunder rumbled through the amphitheater as the Elder drew breath. Slowly, impossibly, for massive eyes opened, each one swirling with galaxies of light. The amphitheater remained frozen in stunned silence as Nixthaler's cosmic eyes focused, orienting to the world around it. Security drones hovered anxiously, their programming conflicted between protecting the Elder and restraining the human who had broken every diplomatic protocol in existence. Dr. Joanna Reeves remained kneeling beside the massive being, monitoring her equipment as the Void Weaver's vital signs stabilized. The energy modulator continued pulsing rhythmically, coaxing the ancient creature's life force back into harmony. "Step away from the Elder immediately." The command came from General Draylock of the Chronaxian Military Council, his exoskeletal armor clanking as he pushed through the crowd. Four armed guards flanked him, weapons not quite pointed at Joanna but clearly ready. "You have violated the most sacred tenets of the Concordance." Admiral Takashi moved to intercept, positioning himself between Joanna and the approaching security forces. "My officer acted to preserve life, the foundational principle upon which the Concordance itself was built. A human has laid hands on an Elder," hissed Ambassador Vrel of the Serpentine Confederation, her scaled face contorted with horror. "Such contamination is unprecedented." Joanna ignored the growing conflict. Her focus remained entirely on her patient as she made minute adjustments to the modulator. "I need everyone to step back," she announced firmly. "His energy field is still unstable." The High Counselor of the Luminari floated forward, his crystalline body refracting light in patterns of obvious distress. "The human speaks correctly. I sense significant disruption in the Elder's aura." Though clearly disturbed by the situation, the scientific part of the counselor's mind couldn't ignore the readings his own senses detected. General Draylock hesitated, caught between outrage and grudging acknowledgement of the situation's delicacy. "This violation will be addressed by the full council," he warned, but signaled his guards to stand down. Beneath Joanna's hands, Nixthaler stirred. The cosmic patterns flowing across its obsidian skin strengthened, forming coherent constellations once more. The modulator's urgent pulsing gradually slowed as the elder's own rhythm stabilized. "Can you understand me?" Joanna asked softly, her medical training overriding her awareness of making history with every word. The four massive eyes, each containing what looked like miniature galaxies, focused directly on her. When Nick Thaler spoke, the sound bypassed conventional hearing, resonating directly within the minds of all present. "I understand, human healer." The mental voice carried the weight of millennia, ancient beyond comprehension yet startlingly clear. "You have prevented my transition to the void." Ripples of shock passed through the assembled dignitaries. Most had never heard the elder speak directly, such communication was typically reserved for the highest ceremonies. Joanna nodded professionally, though her hands trembled slightly. "You experienced a critical energy disruption, similar to what humans would call cardiac arrest. Your core patterns became arrhythmic." "How did a human come to possess knowledge of Voidweaver physiology?" demanded Chief Magistrate Feller, his mechanical implants whirring in agitation. "Such information is restricted to Level Alpha archives." "I studied," Joanna replied simply, still focused on the readings from her scanner. "Extensively. Hypothetically. And then I built this modulator based on theoretical models." Admiral Takashi looked both proud and terrified. "Dr. Reeves has dedicated her career to cross-species emergency medicine." Silence. The thunderous command came from First Chancellor Oryx of the Galactic Security Council, whose massive form now dominated the central platform. "This human has violated 17 separate protocols governing interaction with elder species. The penalty for such transgressions is clear." Joanna finally looked up from her patient, meeting the Chancellor's 6 eyes without flinching. "With all due respect, Chancellor, I took an oath to preserve life, all life, regardless of protocol. I would make the same choice again." The amphitheater erupted in multilingual outrage. Species that had maintained peace for centuries now threatened to dissolve into conflict over this unprecedented breach. Security drones moved into containment formation as various faction representatives advanced arguments simultaneously. "Enough." The mental command from Nick Thaler silenced every voice at once. The elder moved slowly, cosmic patterns rippling across its form as it rose to its full height. Towering over everyone present, the ancient being extended a limb toward Joanna, who still knelt beside it. "Rise, human healer." With quiet dignity, Joanna stood, though she barely reached the middle of the elder's massive torso. "The Council speaks of violation, of transgression," Nick Thaler's mental voice resonated. "Yet I find myself, alive, when the natural course would have been my passage into the void." Chancellor Oryx stepped forward. "Elder, we must address this breach of protocol." "You speak of protocol," interrupted Nick Thaler, cosmic eyes flashing. "I speak of courage. When my life force faltered, when the gathered leaders of 1,000 worlds stood frozen by tradition and fear, this human alone acted." "It was not her place," insisted General Draylock. "And whose place was it?" countered Nick Thaler, its mental voice carrying an edge that made even the battle-hardened general step back. "Would you have preferred I completed my transition while you debated proper procedure?" The silence that followed held a weight of its own. Joanna remained perfectly still, acutely aware that galactic politics hung in precarious balance around her. "The human must still answer for her actions," said the High Counselor of the Luminari, though his tone had softened considerably. "The Council must convene to determine appropriate. I will speak for her." Nick Thaler's statement sent fresh shockwaves through the assembly. Never in recorded history had an elder personally advocated for a member of a younger species. Admiral Takashi stepped forward, bowing deeply. "Elder, while we appreciate your intercession, Dr. Reeves is prepared to accept the consequences of her actions according to concordance law." "I acted as a doctor," Joanna added quietly. "Nothing more, nothing less." Nick Thaler's cosmic eyes studied her with ancient wisdom. "Nothing more. You have altered the course of galactic history, human healer. Such actions rarely come without cost. Before further discussion could occur, the massive doors of the amphitheater burst open. Grand Arbiter Zendril, head of the judicial conclave, entered flanked by a contingent of truth-seers and law-keepers. By authority of the conclave, this human is remanded to custody pending full investigation, announced the arbiter, his ceremonial robes billowing dramatically. The violation of elder sanctity requires immediate adjudication. Dar. Reeves straightened her shoulders, handing her medical scanner to Admiral Takashi. "I'll go willingly," she said, loud enough for all nearby to hear. "But my patient needs continued monitoring for at least 12 standard hours. The energy patterns could destabilize again without warning." The Grand Arbiter hesitated, clearly not having anticipated medical concerns as part of this diplomatic incident. "The human healer will remain," declared Nix Thaler with finality. "I require her continued attendance." "But Elder, the law clearly states," began the arbiter. "I am aware of the law," interrupted Nix Thaler. "I helped write it, 10,000 years before your ancestors achieved sentience." The cosmic patterns across the Elder's skin pulsed with subtle emphasis. "The human stays. The council may convene around us if they wish." Chancellor Oryx and the Grand Arbiter exchanged glances, caught between rigid protocol and the direct will of an elder. Finally, the Chancellor nodded stiffly. "The council will convene here, then. All diplomatic representatives will remain present." He turned to Joanna, eyes narrowed. "And you, human, will explain exactly how you came to possess knowledge reserved for the highest echelons of galactic authority." As the various officials began reorganizing the space for an impromptu tribunal, Admiral Takashi moved closer to Joanna. "You might have just started an interstellar incident," he murmured, looking both impressed and concerned. Joanna watched as her modulator continued its work, stabilizing the ancient being she had somehow saved. "I know, Admiral. But I couldn't just watch him die." The impromptu tribunal transformed the sacred amphitheater into a scene more reminiscent of a galactic court. Representatives from dozens of civilizations arranged themselves in a semicircle facing Dr. Joanna Reeves, who stood alone at the center. Behind her, like a cosmic sentinel, Nix Thaler remained, occasionally shifting in ways that sent ripples of starlight across its obsidian form. Grand Arbiter Zendril took position at an elevated podium, flanked by truth-seers whose empathic abilities would detect any falsehood. Their delicate tendrils waved gently in the air, already attuned to the emotional currents flowing through the chamber. "This tribunal is convened to address the actions of human physician Joanna Reeves," announced the arbiter, his voice amplified throughout the space. "The charges include unauthorized contact with an elder being, utilization of restricted xenobiological knowledge, and disruption of sacred ceremonial proceedings." Admiral Takashi, relegated to the observer section, caught Joanna's eye and nodded encouragingly. "Dr. Reeves," continued the arbiter, "explain how you came to possess knowledge of Void Weaver physiology sufficient to intervene in Elder Nix Thaler's biological processes." Joanna stood straight, her hands clasped behind her back. "I accessed no restricted information, Arbiter. My research was conducted entirely through public xenobiology archives and theoretical modeling based on observational data gathered during previous public elder appearances." Murmurs rippled through the assembly. Professor Then Nix of the Galactic Science Academy leaned forward, his multiple eye stalks extended in interest. "Impossible. Such derivation would require exceptional pattern recognition and theoretical application of cross-species medical principles." "With respect, Professor," Joanna replied, "humans possess particular cognitive capabilities in identifying patterns across seemingly disparate systems. It's partly why we advanced so quickly after joining the Concordance." Chancellor Oryx interrupted with a dismissive gesture. "Regardless of how this knowledge was obtained, the fact remains that physical contact with an elder is strictly forbidden by Section 12, Paragraph 93 of the Concordance Charter. A statute written to prevent harm, not to prohibit life-saving intervention," countered Joanna. "The primary directive of the Concordance is the preservation of sentient life, which supersedes ceremonial protocol." The truth-seer's tendrils waved in agreement, confirming her sincerity if not necessarily the legal accuracy of her statement. Throughout the exchange, Nix Thaler had remained silent, observing with cosmic patience. Now, the elder moved forward slightly, causing all present to fall immediately silent. This proceeding grows circular, the elder's mental voice resonated through the chamber. You debate legal minutiae while ignoring the fundamental question. Grand Arbiter Zendril bowed deeply. What question would that be, elder? Whether I wish to be saved. The statement hung in the air, heavy with implications. No one had considered asking the elder's preference in the matter. In the thousands of years of recorded galactic history, no elder had ever discussed their own mortality so directly. My kind, continued Nix Thaler, have traditionally passed into the void when our time arrives. We do not fear the transition, indeed, many welcome it after witnessing the rise and fall of countless civilizations. Joanna felt a chill run through her. Had she violated not just protocol but the elder's own wishes? Elder, she said quietly, if I acted against your will, I deeply apologize. As a physician, You misunderstand, interrupted Nix Thaler. I do not condemn your actions. I merely observe that no one considered my preference, neither you in saving me, nor the council in condemning you for it. The assembled dignitaries shifted uncomfortably under this rebuke. What were your wishes, elder? Asked the High Counselor of the Luminari, light patterns flickering in agitation. Nix Thaler's cosmic eyes focused on the distance, as if seeing across time itself. I have witnessed 17 cycles of galactic civilization. I have seen empires rise and fall like waves upon the cosmic shore. In recent millennia, I have observed a growing rigidity in the structures we established to maintain peace, protocols taking precedence over principles. The elder turned slightly, indicating the human physician. Then comes this one, from a species barely accepted into the wider community, who acts not according to hierarchy or tradition, but from a fundamental imperative to preserve life. Chancellor Oryx cleared his throat. Elder, while the human's intentions may have been admirable, the sanctity of the established order is hollow without compassion at its core, finished Nix Thaler. You have forgotten why we established the concordance in the first place. It was not to create an immutable hierarchy but to end the suffering caused by ancient hatreds and prejudices. The cosmic patterns across the elder's form intensified as it continued. To answer the counselor's question, no, I did not wish to die today. There is work yet unfinished. Relief washed over Joanna's face. The truth-seer's tendrils curled in confirmation of the elder's sincerity. Then the human acted correctly, stated Professor then Nix, always the logical one. If preservation of life was both her intent and the elder's preference, no violation has occurred in principle, regardless of technical infractions. General Draylock rose from his seat, exoskeletal armor gleaming. This simplifies matters legally but creates a dangerous precedent. If humans can disregard protocols established over millennia whenever they deem it necessary, what becomes of galactic order? Perhaps, suggested Ambassador Phelan of the Reformed Collective, speaking for the first time, galactic order requires periodic disruption to prevent stagnation. The debate might have continued indefinitely had Nix Thaler not raised a limb, silencing all discussion. The elder turned fully toward Joanna, towering over her yet somehow conveying not intimidation but profound respect. Human healer, the mental voice now seemed directed primarily at her, though all could hear it, you acted when others would not. You risked censure and punishment to preserve a life, not because it was an elder life, but because it was life. This principle lies at the heart of true wisdom. And then, to the absolute shock of every being present, Nix Thaler lowered its massive form in what could only be described as a bow. Gasps echoed throughout the amphitheater. In all of recorded history, no elder had ever shown deference to a member of a younger species. The gesture appended thousands of years of established hierarchy in an instant. Elder. Chancellor Oryx's voice cracked with distress. This is unprecedented. Indeed, agreed Nix Thaler, rising again to full height. As is the courage displayed by this human. Let it be known throughout the concordance that I, Nick Thaler, last of the First Council, recognize Joanna Reeves as life-giver and friend to the Void Weavers. The formal declaration, a ritual recognition rarely used even between elders, sent shockwaves through the assembly. Some representatives appeared horrified, others fascinated, and a few, particularly from younger species, seemed quietly pleased. Ambassador Vrel of the Serpentine Confederation hissed in dismay. This undermines the entire foundation of interspecies relations. No, corrected Nick Thaler. It returns us to the true foundation, mutual respect based on actions rather than age or origin. The elders' cosmic eyes swept across the assembly. Too long have the younger species been held at arm's length, their potential contributions diminished by tradition. Admiral Takashi stepped forward cautiously. Elder, while we're honored by your recognition of Dr. Reeves, we understand this creates complications for many present. Change always does, Admiral, replied Nick Thaler. But sometimes, it is necessary. As the implications began to sink in, Joanna realized that in saving one life, she had inadvertently triggered what might become the greatest transformation in galactic society since the formation of the Concordance itself.